Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Live show. I am your host, Billy Powell. If you're listening, you'll have to visualize it. If you're watching, you'll see Coach Brandon Brantley on our show today. You can go to Keeping the Nostalgia Live. That's all one word, keepingthenostalgialive.podbean.com to listen to the audio version, or hopefully you're watching the Keeping the Nostalgia Live show on YouTube. We have hundreds of interviews on keepingthenostalgialive.podbean.com, including Coach Gene Katie, Rick Mount, Chuck Bavis, who's passed away and left us. So there's plenty of stuff there for you guys to listen to. I did get approval before we started this interview that Coach Knight behind us wasn't, I didn't have to remove him. And Coach Brantley said it was okay. We could leave him there. And I think it's just because Coach Katie's down below with an autographed photo to me. So I could spend 10 minutes introducing Brandon Brantley, an East Chicago native, went to Andrean High School, won 3 sectional championships there. 2016 Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame Silver Anniversary Team, 1991 Indiana All-Star, was part of 3 Big Ten championships under Coach Gene Katie, and played 10 years of professional basketball. I hear that you had snow in West Lafayette. You've landed in Minnesota for the game tomorrow afternoon. Coach Brantley, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Man, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Before we get into it, what is the protocol now for COVID and flying, and how difficult is that for you guys to go through or do or get used to?
It's the travel is pretty much the same. The only thing is, you keeping your mask on for the duration of the flight, and there's pretty much no food or beverages on the flight. So if you're hungry and you get on that flight and you haven't eaten, it's going to be hopefully you don't have to go a long distance, because it's going to be kind of tough. But the part I don't like is just keeping your mask on. It just, I think that's the one thing with COVID that's kind of gotten under my skin, is just always keeping a mask on. And I understand why. We want to keep everybody safe. We want to stop the spread of COVID-19. But, sometimes when you have that mask on for a few hours, for me, it just kind of wears on the back of my ears. It just, irritates me. So, I'll be glad, once the masses receive this vaccination and we can kind of get back to normal.
Do you think it'll ever get back to normal? Do you worry about that? Or do you think that modern technology is going to help us out and this will be over?
I think modern technology will definitely help us out, but I don't know if we'll ever get back to, being the way it used to be. It was, I remember when 9/11 went down, and, it was never the same after 9/11. And I think COVID is going to be the same. I think, we're going to get back to living just fine, but it's going to be different.
So is there a lot of testing that goes on? Is there testing before the games, after the games? Is it something that you've got to kind of getting used to, getting yourself swabbed or checked or temperature checked? Or
Yeah, we usually test every morning. We go in and get those swabs, even on off days. So a lot of precautions. Everybody wants to be safe. We want to keep playing games and keep advancing. And so it's just one of the things that we have to go through. I don't mind the testing. That doesn't bother me. Like I said, it's just wearing the mask all day that kind of, wears me down.
Has it hindered the modern day of recruiting, or is that still going on strong, or has it kind of slowed it down a little bit? And how do you feel about high school students now and having to go through this pandemic?
Yeah, it's really affected recruiting as far as being able to evaluate live. Everything is online now. Ever since everything went crazy last March. I haven't been to a high school game, an AAU game, and so we've just been watching games on live streams and watching a lot of videos. So the one thing it kind of forces, since you can't get out and see anybody face to face, making even more phone calls and text messages. And, as far as the recruits go, they really got to do their due diligence because they're not able to go on any official or unofficial visits. So they've been relegated to Zoom calls and conferences on the phone with coaches, and so they really got to build their relationship, on with video calls and FaceTimes and phone calls. So it's really different. You're talking about this 2021 class, and they're probably a bunch of guys that never got a chance to take any visits, and they just had to make their decision. As I said, on Zoom calls and phone calls, and just being able to trust that relationship that they built with someone that they've never seen face to face.
You guys are sitting in fourth place. Did you foresee that, or even think that would be possible this year? Or did you know with the group of guys that you had that, you could be as high as that, going into tomorrow's game?
Oh, we liked our young guys coming in. We made the decision last year, Coach Painter did, to redshirt Mason Gillis and Brandon Newman. And we loved those guys when we got them out of high school. And we had some experienced guys, and coach is big on not wasting guys. And so we felt like we had the team at the time to where we could redshirt those guys, and they could get more reps in as far as practice and some other things as far as getting better, getting ready for this season. The true freshmen that came in, we really liked them. But, in the off season, we lost Matt Harms, we lost Nojel Eastern, two experienced guys, really good defensive players. And so you sitting there in the spring and you just like, man, now we really got to rely on these young guys. And sometimes that's scary, while we did love them. The one thing in college basketball is that you want to be old, man, experience, you win with experienced guys. And so now we're just like, you're already dealing with COVID in the off season and you don't know what the season's going to look like. And now you really got to make sure that, these young guys are going to be ready to go and they can help you. But the one thing is, like, in off season, we knew we recruited the right guys, man, because they were always in the gym working. They wanted everything. They come in and lift every day. They getting extra shots up. They watching film. They just wanted it. And when you have guys like that they want to be there, they believe in your program, they're hanging on every word Coach Painter says, we're just like, okay, we got a chance. It may be a little bumpy starting off, but I think that, we're going to find our way. And here we are. In a very competitive Big Ten conference, doing I guess I want to say an okay job. So,
you're so far into the season. Can you communicate better? What is it like during game time? You don't have the crowd noise and everything else. Can you communicate better with players without the crowds? Is it weird not having the crowds? Do you miss the crowds? Of course you do, especially at home, but how do you feel about that?
I miss the crowds, man. I think that's the one thing that makes college basketball special. Going into Assembly Hall down in Bloomington, and going up to the Breslin Center in Michigan State, and and it's that us against the world mentality, because you got 17,000 people just sitting on top of you, just rooting for you to lose, and it's really hard. People come through Mackey Arena, and I feel like we've got one of the best home environments in college basketball, and they absolutely help us win games. And so now here we are. No fans. And if you watch the games, I guess a lot of people do different things. Me, myself, I kind of like to sit on the baseline and kind of communicate with guys. You can definitely communicate much better because, the noise just isn't there because the fans aren't there. And so some of the things that we talk about in practice as far as the scouting reports, as how we want to defend other teams' actions and whatnot. And so I kind of sit down there and I'm yelling out stuff and trying to get guys to play with energy and try to talk. So if you ever watched our games and you see me down there, that's what I'm doing. So it's definitely different, but it's been fun.
This is your 8th season at Purdue as a coach, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How much, I'm going to show you something. How much do you miss this character?
Man, I miss Jack. When I first got there, I didn't have any collegiate experience. I was trying to get in for a long time, and then all of a sudden you get there and you realize you say, "Oh man, this is a grown man's game." And Jack, even though Jack is younger, he took me under his wing, and I learned a lot about this business just sitting in the office with him during the evenings, whether it was recruiting guys, watching film, just a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So I owe a lot to Jack because it's a very competitive business and everybody's just trying to get their work done and anytime I needed anything, man, he was there for me.
You guys seem to crack on each other or joke on each other. Like, I miss that.
Oh man, he's it's the season can get long, man. It's we're traveling, we're playing games, we're trying to win, we're trying to make sure the guys are okay, and when you're able to work with somebody that can make you laugh every single day, oh man, it's special. So so many memories with Jack Owens, man. Not only a great coach, but an even better man.
Were your mom and dad athletic?
My dad played high school basketball, went on to play at an HBCU called Fisk University in Nashville, where he met my mom. My mom wasn't athletic, so I learned the game from my dad.
And did your dad play Indiana high school basketball, or was he from Illinois?
Yeah, he played at Frable High School, which was up in Gary. They closed their doors, I believe, in 1971. But in their heyday, they had a really good program. They were staunch rivals of Gary Roosevelt High School. So a lot of people, when I growing up and when I go back home, talk about that rivalry. Now I know they had really good teams. So Gary's different now. So
It is. I went to Broadwell High School and we played Gary Roosevelt every year. And it was, if you wanted Gary Roosevelt, you wanted to get out as quick as possible. If you lost at Gary Roosevelt, you could take your time, but you still probably wanted to get out of there. That area of the state, I know I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, but there is so many more state champions that would have come out of that East Chicago, Gary area where you're from. But you guys would beat up on each other, and there's only one team that can come out of that area.
Yeah, it's similar to a sectional in Indianapolis when you got all those schools down there, and there's so many good programs, but only one team can advance, and that's what it was like in Northwest Indiana. The Gary sectional was always tough. Of course, when I came through, Glenn Robinson was there, so you kind of knew who was going to get out of there every year. But even our regional, we Andrean competed in the Hammond sectional, and so my 3 years of playing high school basketball, I was fortunate enough to be able to win that sectional every year. But the regional in East Chicago was so tough. So East Chicago would usually, we would usually see them. Gary Roosevelt was there, so just between those two teams was a mighty task, just to get out of there.
What was recruiting like in your day compared to what it is today?
I tell when I'm recruiting, and sometimes, of course I'm not a teenager now, But when I'm talking to some of these kids, I'll talk about my own experiences. And one thing I always talk about is cell phones. I say, you guys, everybody, the world is different now. Everybody has a phone. So, you can always communicate. But when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones. You had the house phone. And so, I remember every kid, when you first start getting attention and love, you love it. So, oh man, I've arrived. This school's calling and that school's calling, and it's fun. And then all of a sudden, you start getting to your senior year, and it just wears you down. And during those times, there was no cell phone; there was a house phone, and so I got tired of just talking to people at night. I'm a teenager. I wanted to just go out and hang with my friends and play ball, just come home and watch TV. And I couldn't do that because the phone was always ringing, before I made my decision. And so I would try to avoid it. I'd tell my sister, like, tell, whoever calls, tell them I'm not home. And my mom was like, nope, this is what you asked for. And so she wouldn't, we had to answer the phone because there was no caller ID or anything like that. So she said, hey, I don't know, somebody could be dying. We got to pick that phone up. And so now these guys, they got the phone with them wherever they go, and they can receive text messages, they can get emails, they get calls. And so, it's much easier, for these guys, even with the internet, they can get on Twitter, and, it's so much different.
It's interesting. Coach Kelvin Sampson here at the University of Houston, of course, I'm based out of Houston, Texas, is doing a fine job there. But, what he got in trouble for is now legal with text messaging. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, and the world is like that. Sometimes something can be impermissible, and when college coaches after the season, they get together and they talk about things, and they say, hey man, this doesn't make sense. How are you? We're in the business of, I know we're coaching basketball, but at the end of the day, you want to get these young men, you got to have a relationship with them. You want to make them better. Well, how are you going to make a young man better and you don't have a relationship with them? I can only talk to him for a week. I can only do this, but, I'm supposed to, you're not going to have a relationship with anybody. So, in my opinion, that was foolish, so now I'm glad the rule has changed because, these kids are different, man. But I don't care what age you're in. If you're recruiting kids, you want to get to know them, and, when they get there, you want them to be comfortable with you, and you also want to know what you're getting. So, and you can't do that being able to make a certain amount of phone calls or send a certain amount of text messages each week.
In your recruiting process to Purdue, did you have to narrow it down to 2 or 3 schools? And what jersey would have been the closest that you would have possibly worn besides a Boilermaker uniform if you would not have chose Purdue?
Like most kids, a lot of schools look sexy, but in the back of your mind, you just know, like, there's no way I'm going to this school. And there's a lot of schools like that recruited me. I would watch them on ESPN, and I loved the way they played and everything, but I just knew that I wasn't going to go there. I knew I wanted to be close to home because I was close to my family, and, it was important, for me that they were able to come down and see all of my games. And that was one good thing about Purdue, was that we were in such a central location that they could come down and not only see the home games, but they could travel and see me at IU and Northwestern and the Michigan schools and Illinois and Ohio State. It wasn't a bad drive for them to be able to come see me play on the road. But I think Purdue, I always liked Purdue from day one. I went, before I even got into college basketball, I went down to Coach Katie's camps my 5th and 6th grade year. And I had no idea I was going to play basketball, let alone at Purdue. I was just a kid. It was something to do in the summertime. So I would walk around Mackey Arena, and, I saw the players. It's crazy because Matt Gaddis is one of my favorite all-time Boilermakers, because I remember I would look at the posters in the hallway, and Matt Mac always had a cool haircut and had like 3 gold chains on. I said, boy, I like this dude, man. and then when I got to Purdue, Mac was a guy that took me under his wing and really looked out for me. So I'm always gonna have love for Mac Gaddis. But Coach Weber would run those camps, and Coach Weber was always, man, kind, and he was good to me. And when I started playing basketball and I started getting to the level of where colleges were reaching out to me, you know, he was the first coach that called me on the phone, and he remembered me, you know, from being at camp. And so I thought that was incredible. I was like, this dude, like, you know, you think about how many kids would, you know, come through those camps in the summertime, and he remembered me. And I was just like, wow, you know, but they would invite me down to games and a lot of things. And so in the back of my mind, even at that time, even before like maybe they extended an offer or I really kind of seriously considered where I was going to go, I always knew Purdue was going to be on the list. Now, there were some other schools. I definitely looked at Indiana. My dad was a big fan of Indiana's program. He liked Coach Knight, everything that he stood for. I liked Michigan a lot. I was a big fan of that 89 team with Glenn Rice and Terry Mills and those guys. I like Marquette. I really wasn't familiar, but, man, they did a lot of work. They reached out to me a lot. Wisconsin, maybe a couple other schools, but, you know, I kind of knew I wasn't going to go far. I want to stay in the Big Ten. And at the end of the day, so, man, Purdue just made sense. I was familiar with them. I trusted them. You know, I knew players in the program. Glenn and I talked about possibly going to school together and playing together and rooming together. And, you know, and that was back in 1990. And here we are, 2021. And I'm still at Purdue. So I know I made the right decision.
Speak about your relationship with Glenn Robinson. You know, the 1991 Indiana All-Star team. When did your relationship actually start with him?
We met as freshmen in high school. So the very first official high school games that we played against each other. When we, you know, neither one of us played varsity. You didn't see a lot of freshmen playing varsity in that day. So Andrean always opened up with Gary Roosevelt, you know, freshman team, JV team, varsity. And so I was kind of coming into my own. I wasn't very good, you know, when I was young, but then all of a sudden I get to high school and I'm about 6'2", 6'3". I was the best player on my team. So, you know, we're walking into Gary Roosevelt and I'm like, man, we're going to smoke these dudes. I feel good. And then I see Glenn. I'm like, dang, this dude is taller than me. You know, I never heard of him, so I didn't care. You know, he was just okay, you know. And later on that spring, after the season was over, I get a call from AAU team and Gary asking me to come play. So I'm like, oh, yeah, for sure. And the coach was like, yeah, we got the best kid in the area, Glenn Robinson. I'm like, who is that? He was like, the big kid over at Gary Roosevelt. I'm thinking like, man, I'm better than him. So fast forward, we get over to their first practice, and I found out I wasn't better than him. But we got to know each other, and we became fast friends, man. You know, the one thing is that, man, he was so good, but he was so competitive, and I got so much better just you know, not only playing against him but playing with him, you know. And so it's always good when you can have a friend like that that's, you know, that's always gonna push you, you know. And I mean, he was so good, you know. I try to explain to our guys how good he was. And the one thing I learned, like, you know, playing with him was I was like, man, if I can play, you can get so much stuff just playing off of this guy because he drew so much attention. And so I was like, you know, I was like, man, you're not going to, you know, coach is not going to run a play for me when I'm out there on the floor, you know, with him because, you know, he shouldn't. He's so good. He should get the ball every single time. But I'm going to get to the glass every time. You know, I'm a double team. I'm going to have my hands ready just, you know. So I got so much stuff playing with him. But going against him, you know, I knew I had to be hooked up every single day because he was a guy that was just he was just so hooked up. So I was like, man, I got to be on my P's and Q's. I got to be ready. And my redshirt year at Purdue, I had to guard him in practice every single day. And, I got my butt kicked a bunch of times in practice, but it absolutely made me a better player. So, walking into the next season, I said, man, I can guard anybody. I had to deal with this dude for a whole year. I can guard anybody.
Did you have a favorite? Did you have a favorite player in the NBA? Did you have a favorite NBA team growing up?
Love the Bulls, man. In Northwest Indiana, everything Chicago, because we're part of the Chicagoland metropolitan area. So we're just gonna follow everything in Chicago. So I was born and raised a Bulls fan. So I was a Bulls fan before Michael Jordan got there. I remember going to games and it was Reggie Theus's team. You could go to the old Chicago Stadium and you buy a ticket and you got 4 seats. Nobody was going to the games. And then all of a sudden Michael Jordan got there and we were still fortunate. It was before people really found out how good he was. And so we would still go to games. And then I just remember maybe it was the 87, 88 season. It was just like games were sold out. It was so hard to get tickets after that. But Michael Jordan, I really loved Michael Jordan growing up. I loved the Iceman. My mom was from San Antonio, Texas. And so when we would go down to visit, we would go to Spurs games. And so I love George Gervin. Of course, I love Dr. J growing up. I was a kind of like, I had a favorite player, but I appreciate, all great players. Now the big debate is, who's the greatest between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. And people really get mad. Like they draw a line in the sand. And I still believe Michael is the greatest, but I respect LeBron's greatness. Like he's great. You can't take anything away from him. So when I was in high school, the big debate was, who was greater between Magic and Michael. And, I think I'm always going to side with Michael, but, I definitely respected Magic's greatness.
The Iceman played for the Bulls for a little bit.
Yeah. We got him. We got him on the downside of his career, but he was still 16 points a game, but, not good enough to, where we were going to get past Larry Celtics, but it was good. If you watch the Last Dance documentary, just watching the evolution of that team, like I remember it. And so I remember, when the Bulls finally won that title, man, I was just so happy.
There was a game that the Pacers were playing the Spurs, and I think Dudley Bradley was like supposed to be this defensive guru. And if they held the Spurs or George Gervin under a certain amount of points, everybody was going to get free Kentucky Fried Chicken. So, first 2 quarters, Dudley Bradley was holding them to, below average, and then he busted out, and I think he scored 56 for the game, running around telling the fans, no chicken for you. No chicken tonight.
Man, he could score that ball, man. Boy, he could score.
So when you first got on campus and you first started going to practices, what was Gene Keady like? Did you feel like you'd make the right decision? Were you a little scared? What was those first few weeks there like for Brandon Brantley?
I had a relationship with Coach coming in, so I just kind of knew like Coach was like an intense guy. Off the court, man, he was so easy to get along with. Like it was easy, but when you cross the lines, when it was time to do something, like man, you better be hooked up because he was, Coach was a hard charging dude. So, that's what I wanted. If you didn't love the game and you weren't a hard working guy and you weren't competitive, then don't go to Purdue because it wasn't going to work out. But I think I had that instilled in me, and so I embraced it, man. I loved it. When Coach jumped on me, I loved it. I was like, I got to go harder. So when I first got there, it was easy for me. It was, I never felt like I was overwhelmed at Purdue, just, simply because I loved the game. I knew what I was in for. That's what I came for. I came to be coached. I came to be pushed. So, and I was fortunate enough in my last 3 years where we won the Big Ten. So I didn't see that side of Coach that maybe, somebody that came through and had a losing season or they didn't, play as they were expected to. I didn't see that side of Gene Katie.
There's the perception that Indiana hates Purdue, Purdue hates Indiana, but the reality of it is, I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, it's not a marked game on the schedule. It's just like any other game that you played, or did you practice a little bit more for other opponents than you would for some other opponents? Or, do you play ball with some of those people who played at Indiana University against you still? You know what I'm saying? You know where I'm going with that?
It's I think I can speak for those guys when anytime we play them, there is going to be some motivation because they are rivals, and it's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it's supposed to be. Nobody wants to see a soft Indiana Purdue game. The state wants to see us going at them and them going at us, and so I don't think anything's changed. Even now, we play Indiana, our guys they're going to get up for that game, and I'm willing to bet when IU plays us, it's going to be the same. The feeling is mutual. So even when I played, part of me going to Purdue, that was a game that I look forward to because I watched it on TV and I'm like, boy, this is intense. I can't wait to be a part of something like this. But I did know guys who played at that program, and I'm to this day I'm still cool with a bunch of those guys. I played AAU ball with Brian Evans. Brian Evans is a great guy. I knew Allen Henderson coming up because we were in the same class. Man, he's a great guy. Still talk to him to this day, man. Not a good guy, a great guy. I didn't know Calvert in high school, and then I met him once I started coaching at Purdue because he was on staff in St. Louis, and I was just like, this dude is unbelievable. Like, I was like, man, I love just sitting here talking to him. Like, you never know that, man, he's an all-time leading scorer in the Big Ten. Like, just that good of a guy. But Greg Graham, Jamal Meeks, a bunch of those guys, man, just, good guys, and that's the one thing about basketball sometimes is, you compete hard, and then all of a sudden, once the dust settles, and you're like, oh man, these are some good guys over here. So that's how I've always felt about a bunch of guys that have played down there.
When did the idea of coaching basketball come to your mind? Was it during your playing days, of course, or were you getting toward the end of your professional career when it crossed your mind, or is it something that kind of snuck in there during your playing days at Purdue that you wanted to coach?
Probably towards the end of my professional career. And what happens is, you love the game and you just want to play and you want to play. Then all of a sudden you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You're like, well, I'm not going to be able to do this, much longer. And but the game was good to me. I everything I had, I put into the game. Ever since I think I first fell in love with basketball in the third grade. So every time, for the majority of my life, I was waking up in the morning thinking about basketball. And, so I was able to play in elementary school. I played in junior high school, played in high school, played in college. And now, you're overseas, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, it's coming to an end, but I still want to stay around the game. And so I knew I had work to do because, there's such a difference between coaching and playing. And I remember Coach Brantley would always, we had conversations, and, guys play the game and they think that just because they played the game, they can coach the game. And man, it's the furthest thing away from the truth. You cross over and you're like, oh, this is different. So that was one of the big adjustments that I had to make. But I knew I wanted to stay around it because the game was, was good to me. But, you want to be in that team environment. And so for me, one of the things that appealed to me was like working with young men, and so even before I got to the college level, I knew I was going to coach in high school, and so man, I'm going to start somewhere. And I had some offers as far as going to a few high schools in the Indianapolis area, and it came down between Ben Davis and Lawrence North. And, of course, man, you love Lawrence North, man. Jack Keefer's done a great job. The tradition, the players, everything. But I thought I needed to go somewhere where I was like, man, I'm really going to learn the game. Like, he's got a system in place. I don't think you got to do too much because, man, he's just such a great coach and things are going to fall into place. Whereas Ben Davis was bringing in a young coach, it was his first job. So I said, man, I can really roll my sleeves up and kind of learn some things and help this guy. But also I thought, like, because of the young men over there in that area, I said, man, there's some young men over there that could really use a guy like me. And, and I love that's my favorite part of the game is being able to work with young men and help push them to heights that they probably thought they'd never see. And once they're done, you can you see these young men become successful fathers and citizens in the community. So I get my joy from that part of coaching.
Kenny Barlow, who played at Notre Dame and then had a fabulous career overseas, he said the other day that, he gave up a guaranteed contract and gave up playing in the NBA, but he would not do it over again and would continue to play overseas for what he would do it again the same way. How hard, I know you had a tryout with the Pacers. How disappointed were you that you didn't go into the NBA or play in the NBA? And then how excited or how much fun was it playing in that 10-year professional career that you did have overseas?
Well, I wasn't a guy that was, I always knew, like, it's hard to play in the NBA. I look at some of these young guys now and like they know they're going to the NBA. I'm just like, boy, that's a lot of confidence to have. Like, have you really sat down and watched an NBA game? Have you like seen these guys up close? And I know I competed at a high level in college, but I was realistic. I was like, man, everybody wants to play in the NBA, but man, it's going to be hard. And so, I was fortunate enough to be invited into a rookie camp with the Pacers, and even going in, and I thought I did pretty well. I was like, man, this is going to be hard. It's only a certain amount of spots. You got to be really, really good. So when I didn't make it, I wasn't, my head wasn't down. I kind of knew. I was like, I need to start working with my agent on building the right connections to get overseas, because you can still get over there and play some good ball and make a good living. And that's what happened for me. And so, man, I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. I met so many amazing people overseas. I got to see the world, play some great basketball. And so, that's, I look at it as, I said, man, that's what God wanted and needed me to be, and man, 10 fabulous years, man. I'm still in contact with a lot of people that I met overseas. So I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But I knew it was hard to play in the NBA. So it's sometimes when these young guys talk about it, I'm just like, man, you make it sound like it's like baking a cake on Sunday morning.
So you're a historian of the game. You're a basketball junkie. How do you continue a relationship with someone and be a junkie of the game? Like, is your wife also a basketball a lover? I mean, how do you balance a personal life with coaching the game of basketball?
My wife is she watches the games. She'll watch. I think she understands a little bit more because I'm, it's my job, and so she'll see these teams when she comes to the game. So I think she'll watch, some of the games on TV a little bit. I'm not gonna say she's totally engulfed into it, but the one thing is, we go into the office, and man, Coach Painter is, he's like a walking basketball encyclopedia. You drop any name and he knows, and he's gonna tell you the high school that guy went to, college, man, knows everything. So, even though we're in there trying to, do the best job we can for Purdue, a lot of basketball conversations, and also with Facebook, you mentioned Ken Barlow, and I love going over to Barlow's page, and, just a bunch of guys, it's kind of like a virtual barbershop over there. So we arguing and debating the game, who's better between this guy and that guy, and what would this team do in that era. And so I'm not a big television watcher, but I can sit on Facebook some nights and just debate basketball for hours. It's my passion. I love the game, and so part of that passion is putting everything I have into the job and helping these young men. But my getaway sometimes is watching NBA basketball game or simply just being around some former players and just talking about the game.
Once Barlow and you guys get into that conversation, I'm like, nah, I'm not even going to get into. I'm not even going to get into that because I could be getting notifications up until 3 or 4 in the morning. Do you watch the NBA game today? It's changed. I scratch my head sometimes when I watch the NBA today. Do you do the same thing, or are you just is it different than what it was?
It's evolved, and
Better.
And sometimes I'm not going to say better or worse. I've had this conversation. I know Kevin Garnett made some comments past couple of days saying like guards from 20 years ago couldn't play in this era, and I'm just like, well, why not? I said they put their pants on the same way. The game has just changed. I said, so if you take Tim Hardaway and Tim Hardaway from 1993 is just not going to fall into the NBA. If Tim Hardaway was playing in this era, he would play like these guys play. So it's not like you're not going to have a bunch of guys just being warped into 2021 from the mid 90s. Like it just doesn't work like that. People say, oh, LeBron James couldn't have played in the 80s. Well, why not? I said he'd be just like everybody else. Like he'll have that same mentality, the same makeup. He's going to play the game like everybody else. Like LeBron James from 2020 is just not going to fall into 1985. It doesn't work like that. So I didn't understand his comments.
Do you play basketball video games?
No, I'm not. I'm not a video game guy. But watching the game, I mean, the game, it's good. You don't want the game. We all love the game. When Larry Bird and Magic was playing, you appreciate it. But I'm happy that the game evolved. You love the game in the 90s when Michael and those guys played. The game evolved. Then it goes to Shaq and Kobe and Tim Duncan Spurs. And, it was all great basketball. But, that's the beautiful thing about our sport is that it keeps evolving. And so now you see these, the 3-point shot is such a weapon. And so now, you watched back in the golden era of NBA basketball, and it was a big man's game. And now, you're talking about 5 skilled guys. If you look back and you look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they had to dribble down the court and like throw it into him in the post. And so now, you're talking about a guy that's Kareem's size that can, he can get the rebound, he can bring it up himself. He can make a dribble up 3. He can make a move off the bounce, and he can advance the ball. So, the game is, it evolves.
When you talk about the greatest of all time, a lot of people will leave Wilt and Kareem that, it's always a Michael Jordan or a LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or, this person. I mean, the big guys made the game evolve because of how big and how dominant they were.
Yeah, it's, another great thing about our sport, it's football. It's just like, that argument is so much harder in football because, it's there's so many different positions. And, I was having this conversation with somebody. I was saying, like, how can you leave like a guy like Ray Lewis out of the conversation? Like, Ray Lewis is always on the defensive side of the ball, but he impacted the game. So how can you just throw 50 guys ahead of him? And I was like, one year his team won the Super Bowl. Like, he was the best player in the NFL, and he was never on the offensive side of the football. So I said it's so disrespectful to, like, but it's so different for football. But for basketball, every guy plays offense and defense, but it's so different, and so it is hard to say like who's the greatest of all time because all the eras were different, what Michael did was unbelievable. But, what Magic and Bird came through and saved the game. Like what they did was incredible. What Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did in the 70s was incredible. And I tell the young guys, I wasn't around, I wasn't alive. I didn't see, Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell in their primes, but, you can't undermine their numbers and what they did. And, also in that time, facing the racism that they did. And I said, man, you can't discount that. I said, that's, being able to like get up every single day and do your job at a high level while dealing with that. I said, man, it's something to be said for that.
Speaking of racism, do you still see it in today's game?
Yeah, racism isn't going anywhere. It's just a part of the world. I mean, it's been around for centuries. My thing with it is that we don't have enough real conversation. It's people just, oh no, don't talk about that. Don't bring that up. And it's like, well, why not? How are we going to advance if we don't talk about things? We just keep sweeping things underneath the rug. And when you do, all of a sudden, when you can't, when there's no more room to sweep stuff under there, you get that you have 2020 where people in the streets and they setting stuff on fire and they're rioting and everything, And so I think we all have to have real conversations and talk about things. And so even though that stuff happened, man, we had real conversation and dialogue after that stuff happened, and I think it's helped our country.
We all go to work to better ourselves. And I know there's probably a standardized answer that you can give me, but I mean, have you been asked a few years about taking on a college program? How do you handle it the same way you handled the recruiters calling your house when you were going to college? I'm assuming that's your goal, is to be a head coach. I mean, how does that, and if you want to keep your plans under wrap, that's fine too. How does that all go around in your head as you continue to do your job in your 8th season at Purdue?
I think everybody at the end of the day, you do want to lead your own program. But when I got this job, anytime you get something, you want to leave it better than you found it. You want to leave, your imprint. And so I was already coming to work for a great boss and Matt Painter, but he's such a great guy, and I was like, man, I want to get to a Final Four. I think he deserves it. The university deserves it. All the former players that ever came through, the fan base, we've been close, but, sometimes close is not good enough. We want to get there. I think we deserve it. And so, that was the one thing I said, man, I just want to do my part and help, get us to a Final Four. And then, just like I talked about, going overseas, I was there for 10 years. I believe in God, and God is going to lead me to where I need to be and where I'm wanted.
Virginia is going to be the longest reigning NCAA champion of all time, of course. But was that game as crazy as I watched it?
It was, we came out hot, and we were battling, and then all of a sudden, they're a great team. They ended up cutting the nets down, and so they make their run, and then we get down, and all of a sudden, man, we come storming back, and I remember just watching, at the end, I'm just like, man, we finally here, we're gonna do it. Then all of a sudden, Ty Jerome, I mean, he misses that free throw perfectly. It goes back. And I remember like no jail was kind of like in between. And he doesn't let Kihei Clark make the pass to I think it was Kyle Guy or Ty Jerome back there. He prevents them from making that pass, and so he advances it up to the big guy. And I'm just like, man, Matt stays back. So I'm just like, oh, man. And he makes that shot. And I'm just like, oh, my God, just, and the rest is history. So, I think we did all the right things, and it's just, that's the way it played out. But just watching it, I was just like, man, this is crazy. I just remember after the game, like, everybody's just so distraught, and coach comes in and come on, we got to go check on these guys, because it was about them. It wasn't about us. You put so much time into it, and that's the thing. Like when the game is over, I mean, it's just so much, emotion and stuff in the atmosphere. And, you can't sit there and worry about yourself. It's about those kids, man, because they're the ones that put the uniform on. They go out there and fight. They did everything right, and the ball just didn't bounce our way. And so I just, going in there and comforting those guys, and, from where we started, out that season to where we finished, man, it was just incredible.
Are you guys excited? It doesn't matter that everything is going to be in the Indianapolis area for the Big Ten tournament. I think is in Indianapolis. The NCAA tournament's going to be in Indiana. Were you guys excited to hear that? It doesn't make a difference. You guys just have one common goal, or how did you guys when you found that out?
Me myself, I'm excited because we don't have to travel that far. But no matter where the games are going to be played, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and fight anyway. I don't think like anybody's going to lay down just because, they got to play Purdue in the state of Indiana. It's going to be no different, man. It's going to take a lot of focus and hard work and determination to win an NCAA tournament game. I don't think people realize like how hard that is. Because everybody is playing at such a high level, and everything is on 10. So like I said, no matter where the game is, man, it's going to be a fight.
You've been so gracious and fantastic. I appreciate you taking time. I know you have a busy schedule, but one other question, and without dissing any school, is there a place where, and it may be where you're at today, is there a place where you're like, man, I just really don't want to go up to Minnesota this time around? Or is there a place that you really don't enjoy going or enjoy playing?
I think I appreciate going everywhere, because some of these places, I got good memories of coming to, when I was in college. In Minnesota, I don't know if anybody wants to come up here this time of the year because it's so cold. But, coming in Williams Arena, man, it's one of my favorite arenas. I mean, I love, the city of Minneapolis, man. Beautiful city, beautiful downtown. And, the worst part is just walking outside of the hotel and getting on the bus, just facing the cold. But once you get in that arena, it's just, man, so many memories. I got some good friends that played up here. But when I was playing, Nebraska wasn't in the league, Maryland wasn't in the league, Rutgers wasn't in the league, and so being able to anytime at least for me, being able to see an arena that I never played in or visited, and all of a sudden you get a chance to walk around and see all the history and the great players that have played at these respective arenas, it's a big deal to me. Maryland, man, growing up, Maryland is one of the greatest college programs of all time. And you go through there and you see the names of the guys that came through, you just like, wow, so, there's not a place that I don't enjoy going to in our conference.
Well, I got to meet you 5 years ago in 2016 when you came down for the Final Four here in Houston, and Coach Dave Shellhouse, Purdue All-American himself, was here. And it took 5 years for me to get you on the show, but it's fantastic. And you're not as intimidating as I thought the big man was going to be. And I thank you so much for your time.
Oh, man, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And anytime I get a chance to talk some basketball, it's my passion. So, man, thank you for having me on.
I think everyone enjoyed it. I thank you for your time, and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.